The morning light crawled across the blinds before I even opened my eyes. It was a Saturday, early spring, the kind of day that already smelled like barbecues and cut grass even though the sun hadn't fully climbed. My phone buzzed with a reminder I didn't need. Birthday dinner, 6:30 p.m. as if I could forget. Megan was already in the kitchen. I could hear the soft rhythm of the blender and her voice humming along to something on the radio. It was ordinary, peaceful, the kind of morning you believe will stay with you forever. Because you don't expect it to become the one that changes everything. I walked down the hall, still half asleep, and there she was barefoot, hair messy from sleep, pouring a smoothie into a glass. Her belly had just started to show. She was around 5 months along. Every time I saw that small curve, I felt something rise inside me that I couldn't explain, part pride, part fear, part disbelief that life could actually be that kind. Morning, she said. Morning. You up early? I couldn't sleep. The baby kicked half the night. She smiled when she said it, but her eyes flicked away for a second. I didn't think much of it then. People look away all the time. I kissed her cheek, tasted strawberries, and felt her lean just slightly back instead of toward me. Big day, I said, reaching for coffee. Yeah, 31, she teased. You're officially old. Thanks for the reminder. The coffee machine gurgled like it was complaining too, and I laughed under my breath. That was the rhythm of our morning's little jokes, light sarcasm, nothing dramatic. Megan liked things simple. She liked predictability. Or at least, I thought she did. By noon, the house smelled of cleaning spray and fresh bread. Megan always cleaned before people came over. Even though tonight's dinner wasn't here, it was at Jason's place, 10 minutes away. Jason and I went back to college. He'd started a mobile bar service that made him something of a local celebrity among our friends. Tyler, the real estate guy, had been bragging about closing a deal on a lake house all week. And Connor, steady as ever, would come straight from a hospital shift with his easy grin and stories about impossible patients. They were my guys, my inner circle, the people I trusted more than anyone. Outside of Megan, do you want me to drive? She asked as she folded a cardigan into her bag. I'll drive. You've done enough lately. You're sweet, she said, and her tone had a faint distance, like her mind was somewhere else. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Pregnancy wasn't easy. I'd read enough about hormones and restlessness to keep myself patient. By 5:30, we were dressed and ready. The mirror caught her side by side me in a clean button-up, her in a soft cream dress that made her look like sunlight itself. I took a quick photo on my phone, the kind you post with a caption like "Lucky Man." She smiled, but not quite to the eyes. I didn't see it then, but later that photo would look different to me, like she was already somewhere else entirely. The drive to Jason's wound through quiet suburban streets, each house framed by identical lawns and mailboxes. The outside shimmered with heat. Cicadas droned like background music. Megan rested her hand on the window and watched the scenery blur. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing. Just tired. Want to skip it? We can stay home. No. They worked hard on this party. It's for you. She smiled again. That same soft one that meant drop it. So I did. Jason's house was already buzzing when we arrived. Music, laughter, the smell of grilled food. He lived for gatherings like this, for the noise and energy. Birthday man, he yelled, waving a beer as he came down the steps. Get in here, brother. He hugged me, clapped my back to heart, and gave Megan that long, effortless smile that always seemed half flirt, half joke. She laughed. I felt a small, harmless pinch of jealousy that I ignored. The way you ignore a fly that doesn't bite. Inside, the lights were warm and dim, strings of bulbs across the backyard giving everything a golden hue. Tyler was manning the grill, pretending to be a chef. Connor sat near the patio table, tapping something on his phone, probably texting a nurse from work. The music thumped just loud enough to blur the edges of conversation. Speech later, Jason said, refilling my drink. You've got to say something inspiring when we do the toast. I'll think of something, I replied. Make it good. No pressure. He winked. I didn't notice how Megan's smile faltered beside him. As the evening stretched, people drifted between the house and the yard. I caught pieces of laughter, fragments of sentences. Megan was talking to Tyler by the kitchen island. Something about real estate listings. Jason moved between them like he owned their air in the room. Connor joined in later, his scrubs exchanged for jeans, but still carrying the calm of the hospital. It felt easy, comfortable, familiar. Around 9, my phone buzzed with a video call from Mom. She'd never missed one of my birthdays. Go ahead, Megan said, waving me off. Say hi to her before she falls asleep. I stepped outside near the driveway, where the night air was cooler. The cicadas were louder out there, the kind of noise that fills the gaps when your thoughts start to wander. Hi, Emma, I said, smiling into the phone. Her face filled the screen, warm and proud as always. Happy birthday, sweetheart. How's my favorite son? I'm your only son, exactly. She laughed, and for the next 10 minutes, we talked about everything: her garden, work, how excited she was about the baby. I turned slightly so the light from the window didn't glare across the screen. When I hung up, the laughter inside had changed somehow. It wasn't louder, it was different. I stepped toward the door, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was nothing. I couldn't tell. Back inside, the crowd had thinned. Some people had already left. Jason was nowhere in sight. Neither were Tyler or Connor. Megan too was gone from the kitchen. I glanced at the living room empty. Backyard quiet. Music still playing, softer now. The air smelled of leftover food and spilled drinks. Then I saw it. The guest room door down the hall. Closed. It was always open before. Jason used it for storage or as a coat room. Now it was shut tight, and a sliver of light seeped from underneath. I stood there longer than I should have, frozen between logic and suspicion. I told myself a dozen harmless explanations. Maybe Megan was resting. Maybe someone felt sick. Maybe they were grabbing something from the closet. But the longer I listened, the clearer the silence felt. A silence too heavy for an empty room. I knocked once, lightly. Hey, you guys okay? No answer. I heard something faint, a whisper. A shuffle, but it could have been anything. I took a slow step back. My hand hovered over the doorknob, then dropped. It wasn't fear that stopped me. It was something else, a cold clarity that said, not now. I forced a breath and turned away, walking back toward the kitchen. The clock over the sink showed 9:47. I made a note of it without knowing why. A few minutes later, the door opened behind me. Jason came out first, adjusting his shirt, laughing under his breath. Man, that was crazy, he muttered, and I couldn't make sense of it. Tyler followed, eyes flicking toward me then away. Connor last, carrying 2 empty glasses. Megan emerged a bit later, her hair slightly mussed, smile to practiced. There you are, I said, keeping my voice even. Sorry, she said quickly. We were looking for something. Jason thought he left one of the presents in there. Jason grinned. Yeah, my bad. Crisis averted. He said it like it was funny. It wasn't. For the next hour, I smiled. I thanked people for coming. I raised my glass for the toast Jason insisted on. 31 years of being the calmest guy I know, Jason said loudly, slinging an arm around me. Here's to Ethan, the one we all count on to keep our chaos organized. Laughter. Cheers. Glasses clinking. I smiled again, though my throat was dry. Later, after everyone left and we drove home, the silence in the car was thick. Megan leaned against the window, pretending to doze off. I let her daughter tea home. She went straight to bed. I told her I needed to finish some work emails. She nodded, half asleep already. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, the glow of the screen cutting through the dark. Our security camera app was still open from earlier, one of those small conveniences you forget exists. I tapped it, almost absent-mindedly. The playback from 9:40 p.m. appeared, grainy but clear. The hallway at Jason's house. I'd connected to his Wi-Fi before. My phone must automatically save the feed when I helped him install his own camera system months ago. He'd given me access back then just in case. The image showed the hallway, people passing. Then, at 9:43, 3 familiar figures stepping quietly toward that closed guest room door. Jason first, then Tyler, then Connor. One by one, the door closed. A long gap of silence started to 9:47. The door opened again. They came out in the same order, glancing around. Moments later, Megan appeared, smoothing her hair, her eyes flicking toward the camera, but not seeing it. I watched it twice, then a third time, because I didn't believe my own sight. No sound, no context, just movement, faces, timing. Enough to fracture something deep and silent inside me. I didn't speak, didn't breathe for a moment. The air in the kitchen felt heavier, colder. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Life continued like nothing had happened. I pressed the screen dark and sat there, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles turned white. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I'd lost my mind for even thinking it. but the pit in my stomach knew better. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and let the silence wrap around me until it became something solid. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no breaking of things, just a quiet decision forming in the shadows. The night didn't end with an explosion. It ended with stillness, the kind that only comes when you realize the truth might already be sitting across from you. Pretending to sleep in the next room, I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and sat in the dark kitchen until the first ray of dawn touched the blinds. That was the day that was meant to be perfect. The day that started everything I didn't yet know I'd have to finish, the morning after my birthday. The air in the house felt different. Not colder, exactly, but thinner, like every breath had to fight for space. Megan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, a half-eaten piece of toast beside her. She was scrolling through something news, emails, maybe nothing at all. Her hair was tied up messily, and her fingers trembled when she lifted her cup. "Morning," I said. She looked up too quickly, smiled. "Morning. Did you sleep?" "A bit." I poured myself coffee, though my stomach twisted at the smell. The cup clinked against the counter louder than it should have. Every sound felt exaggerated in that quiet kitchen, the scrape of the chair, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tapping of her fingernail against the mug. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "Just tired." That was true enough. I hadn't really slept. Not after watching the recording again, then again after that, each time convincing myself that I was mistaken. I'd stared at their faces on the screen until they blurred into shadows, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, the door, the light under it, the sequence of them stepping out. And then Megan went back to her laptop. I sat across from her and watched the morning light crawl across the table between us. It used to be comforting. Now it looked like a line dividing two worlds. "Do you need help with anything today?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, almost casual. She shook her head. "No, I'm good. I'm gonna meet my sister for lunch." "Then maybe nap. Sounds nice." I tried to smile. She smiled back, faintly, but there was distance in her eyes, a subtle flicker of caution. Like she was measuring every word. After she left, the house fell silent again. I sat there, holding the cold mug, staring at the grain of the wooden table. It was the same table we'd bought when we moved in 3 years ago. We'd spent an hour arguing in the furniture store because she wanted round and I wanted square. We compromised on this one, rectangular with rounded corners. We'd called it the peace treaty. I almost laughed at the irony now. The baby's first ultrasound photo hung on the fridge. I stood and looked at it for a long time. The image was grainy, almost abstract, but it was real, something that existed because of us. I wanted to believe that piece of truth still meant something. Later that morning, I went into the office. I couldn't stand the quiet anymore. My coworkers greeted me with smiles and late birthday wishes. I nodded, answered questions, sat through meetings. My body was there, but my mind kept drifting back to that hallway video like a song stuck on repeat. At lunch, I sat in the break room, staring at a sandwich I couldn't taste. My phone has Jason's name on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, man." His voice was loud, cheerful, too normal. "You alive after last night?" That was one for the books. "Yeah," I said carefully. "Tired though. You were a good sport, as always." Megan looked great, by the way, glowing. "You two are killing it." I bit the inside of my cheek. "Thanks. Anyway, we're thinking of doing another barbecue next weekend. Maybe at the lake. You in?" "Not sure yet," I said. "We'll see how the week goes." "All right, cool. Don't be a stranger." When I hung up, my hand was shaking slightly. He sounded so ordinary, so unbothered. Either he was a master actor or truly believed nothing was wrong. I couldn't decide which was worse. That evening, Megan came home with a shopping bag, baby clothes, tiny onesies in neutral colors. She showed them to me with the same careful enthusiasm she used when speaking to a customer, as if performing normalcy might make it real. "They had a sale," she said. "Couldn't resist." "They're nice," I said, touching one of the little outfits. The fabric was soft as air. "You already thinking of names?" "Maybe," she said, smiling for real this time. "I still like Emma, or Noah if it's a boy. Those are good names." My throat tightened around the words. We spent the rest of the evening in an uneasy rhythm of politeness, dinner, small talk, dishes. She asked about my day. I asked about hers. We didn't touch. When she went to bed, I stayed up again, staring at the laptop screen, trying to decide what to do with what I knew. Deleting the video crossed my mind more than once. Pretend it never happened. Convince myself it was a misunderstanding. But the thought of erasing it felt like betraying something deeper, my own sanity. Maybe. I saved it instead, hidden behind layers of folders labeled work DOCs and 202 receipts. Over the next weeks, life moved forward in strange mimicry of normal. I went to work, came home, fixed things around the house. Megan attended her prenatal classes, texted her sister, scrolled through baby blogs. We spoke, we laughed sometimes, but always with a softness that avoided depth. It was like we were acting in a play neither of us had rehearsed for. Every day, small details became sharper. The way her phone was always face down on the table, the sudden switch of tabs when I walked into the room, the way she'd glance at the clock when texting, as if tracking invisible boundaries. None of it was conclusive. All of it was enough. One afternoon, while she napped, I sat in the living room and opened my notebook, the same one I used for project notes at work. On a fresh page, I wrote 3 names: Jason, Tyler, Connor. Then I drew small checkboxes beside each. Below them, I wrote, what do I actually know? What can be proved? What matters? I didn't know yet what the list was for: revenge, clarity, or just something to keep me from unraveling. But writing it made me feel anchored, as if order still existed somewhere under the mess. Days blurred into each other. The heat in Austin thickened as summer approached. Cicadas screamed outside at night. Megan's belly grew, and with it, the distance between us. Sometimes I caught myself watching her when she didn't see me, how carefully she avoided looking directly into my eyes. How often she'd sigh after reading her phone. I wondered what she was thinking. If guilt sounded different in a person's breathing, I could have recognized it. One night, I found her sitting in the baby's room. The crib was half assembled, screws and wooden panels scattered like pieces of a puzzle. She was holding the tiny mobile we'd bought weeks ago, the one with clouds and stars. Her face was unreadable. Need help? I asked from the doorway. She startled slightly. No, it's fine. I just couldn't sleep. I stepped closer, picked up one of the screws. We could finish it together. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. We worked in silence, the only sound the occasional click of metal and wood. When we finished, she whispered, it's beautiful. Yeah, I said. It is. She reached out and touched my arm lightly. Thank you. I almost said for what, but didn't. Her hand lingered for a second, then dropped. She left the room, leaving me there with the crib, the faint scent of sawdust, and the echo of everything we weren't saying. A week later, I had my first appointment with a therapist. It was my co-worker's recommendation, a quiet office downtown, soft lights, neutral walls. The therapist, Dr. Bennett, had kind eyes and a calm, deliberate voice. So Ethan, she said after the introductions, what brings you in today? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I think I've lost trust in someone close to me. Your wife? I nodded. Has there been an event that led to that loss of trust? I hesitated again. Something happened. Or maybe I just think it did. She didn't press. And how have you been coping? I don't know, I said. Working. Staying busy. Trying not to think about it. But it doesn't go away. That's common. The mind tends to circle what's unresolved. I am not looking to make excuses, I said quietly. I just want to understand what to do next. She smiled faintly. Sometimes the first step isn't doing. It's seeing clearly, seeing clearly. The word stayed with me long after the session ended. I started to record things, not just notes, but times, dates, conversations. Not as proof, but as a way to make sense of patterns. I needed something solid to hold onto. One evening, Megan came home later than usual. I asked where she'd been. Stopped by the store, she said. Craving those ice pops again. I nodded. Did you get them? Yeah. She held up the bag, smiling. Want one? I shook my head. I'm good. Later, when she went to shower, I glanced at the receipt sticking out of the grocery bag. The timestamp read 7:58 p.m. The store she mentioned closed at 7:30. I folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. My heart didn't even race this time. It just sank quietly, like a stone dropped into deep water. That night, she fell asleep quickly. I stayed awake again, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. My thoughts moved slower now, less frantic, more deliberate. I realized I wasn't afraid anymore, just certain. The next day, I scheduled a consultation, not with a detective, not with anyone dramatic, with a lawyer. someone who specialized in family law. His office smelled of paper and cologne, the kind of sterile professionalism that promised discretion. "I'm not filing anything," I told him. "I just want to understand my options." "Hypothetically, of course," he said, flipping open a notebook. "These things are always hypothetical at first." We spoke for an hour about legal boundaries, property, custody rights, evidence that counted and evidence that didn't. He never asked for details, and I never volunteered them. But by the time I left, I knew two things. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't powerless. At home that night, Megan was folding laundry. She looked up as I came in. "You were out late," she said. "Yeah, work thing." She nodded, accepting it easily. Maybe she wanted to believe my half-truths as much as I wanted to believe hers. We watched a movie after dinner, something light, and for a brief moment, sitting side by side on the couch, I felt the echo of what we used to be. Her head rested against my shoulder. My hand brushed hers. It was almost natural, but even that moment had edges. Like glass under fabric. When the credits rolled, she yawned and said she was going to bed. I stayed behind, muted the TV, and stared at our reflection in the darkened screen, fading into the hallway. Me still, silent. The next few days passed in an almost eerie calm. We smiled more, spoke more gently. Anyone watching from the outside might have thought we were fine, but every conversation had a weight beneath it. Every laugh carried an echo. Then one morning, I found a small envelope on my desk. No note, no explanation. Inside was a medical report, the results from her last prenatal visit. I'd seen these before, but this one had an extra line at the bottom. Estimated conception date. The range printed there didn't match the timeline we'd been told months ago. I read it 3 times. The numbers didn't lie, but they also didn't accuse. They just existed, quiet and undeniable. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my notebook beside the list of names. My hands were steady, but my mind buzzed like static. That evening, when Megan came home, I greeted her as usual. We talked about dinner, about the neighbor's dog, about nothing at all. I asked how she felt. She said fine. She looked tired. I told her to rest. She kissed my cheek, light and quick, and went upstairs after she was gone. I sat alone in the kitchen again. The same table, the same hum of appliances, the same air that no longer felt like ours. I didn't look at the video anymore. I didn't need to. The truth had settled quietly inside me, patient and sharp. It wasn't about anger now. It was about understanding what to do with the pieces left. The baby's room door was open. The crib we built stood ready, the mobile turning slowly in the faint air from the vent. I walked in and stood there, letting my fingers brush the edge of the wood. The sound of Megan's footsteps upstairs was soft and distant. Like another world, for the first time since that night, I whispered into the empty room. "I'll make sure you're safe." I didn't know if I was talking to the baby, to myself, or to the ghost of the life we used to have. But saying it made the silence shift, almost gently, as if the house itself was listening. And so the weeks continued, quiet mornings, polite evenings, and that silent promise pulsing somewhere beneath them all. A promise that would soon demand action. But not yet. For now, it was just the two of us, me and the silence, learning to breathe in the same space without breaking. And somewhere in that stillness, something inside me began to change shape. The first rain in weeks came that Monday. It started with a faint hiss against the windows before dawn, soft and steady, the kind of sound that usually comforts me. That morning, it didn't. The rhythm of the drops only made the silence in our house louder. Megan was still asleep when I left for work. She'd taken to sleeping later lately. The doctor said it was normal fatigue, hormones, all part of the process. I wanted to believe that. But lately, everything I wanted to believe seemed to come with an asterisk. The sky was a dull grey, the air thick with that metallic smell that comes before a storm. My reflection in the car window looked older, sharper. I'd started noticing lines on my face I hadn't seen before. Maybe they'd always been there, waiting for the right kind of light to the office. I kept myself buried in projects. Spreadsheets, timelines, code reviews. It was easier than thinking. Work had rules. Life didn't anymore. Still, I caught myself glancing at my phone every few minutes, half expecting it to light up with her name, or with one of theirs. It never did. That afternoon, I received an email from our HR department. Upcoming ethics workshop, conflict resolution in the workplace. The irony nearly made me laugh. I signed up anyway. There was something comforting about the word ethics, as if it promised a world where right and wrong still had borders. When I got home that evening, Megan was in the living room, curled up with a blanket, watching one of those renovation shows she loved. A couple on the screen argued about paint colors while pretending to be happy. It felt uncomfortably close to home. "Hey," I said, setting my keys on the counter. "How was your day?" "Fine," she said without looking away from the TV. "Yours?" "Busy." I paused. "You heard from Jason lately?" Her shoulders stiffened just slightly. "Why, just curious." "He called last week about that barbecue." "Oh." She hesitated. "He texted me a picture of the baby shower invitation they're planning." For us. I repeated quietly. She muted the TV and looked at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and something else, defensiveness, maybe. "Ethan, I know you're upset about things, but he's trying to be nice." "Nice," I said, tasting the word. "Right," she sighed. "Can we not do this tonight?" "I'm not doing anything." Her eyes softened, almost pleading. "Please." "I'm exhausted." I nodded and walked away before the silence between us broke into something worse. Later, when she was asleep, I sat in my office upstairs and opened my notebook again. The list of names stared back at me like a small constellation. Jason, Tyler, Connor, each name underlined, checked once. I'd learned small details in the past few weeks, public ones, not secrets. Jason had been behind on taxes for his bar business. Tyler's firm was under review for a misfiled contract. Connor had requested time off from the hospital after a personal incident. I hadn't caused any of it. Not yet. But I understood now how easy it was to let truth move quietly in the right direction. I wasn't planning destruction. That word never entered my mind. I was planning balance, setting things back in order, without breaking the rules of the world that had already cracked me open. It started simply. A message to Jason's supplier, polite, anonymous, pointing out inconsistencies in one of his invoices. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just asked questions. Questions are powerful when timed correctly. Then, a quiet email to Tyler's agency, forwarding a copy of a public HOA report about noise disturbances during one of his property events. No comment added, just the document, and for Connor nothing malicious. I just sent a brief, factual note to his hospital's HR department. An observation regarding professional boundaries during our social gatherings. I signed it with a generic name and let the truth fill in the blanks. None of these things were lies. None of them were dramatic. They were pieces of reality reframed, like holding up a mirror at a slightly different angle. I slept better that week, not because I felt righteous, but because I finally felt something other than confusion. The world had shifted back a fraction toward equilibrium. Megan noticed the change. "You seem lighter lately," she said one morning as she poured coffee. "Do I?" "Yeah, it's nice to see." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just getting used to things." She reached for my hand. "I know I've been distant." "I'm sorry." Her apology hit me like cold water. It sounded genuine. Maybe it was, but it came too easily, too late. "I get it," I said softly. "You've had a lot on your mind." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I thought she might say something else, something that mattered. Instead, she just nodded and changed the subject to baby names again that afternoon. I got a text from Connor. "Can we talk?" "It's about the other night." My pulse jumped, but I forced myself to breathe. "Sure," I typed back. "Coffee tomorrow?" We met at a small CAF downtown. He looked tired, darker circles under his eyes than usual. "Ethan," he said quietly, sitting across from me. "I don't know what Jason told you, or if you heard anything, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "For everything." The words hung in the air between us. "What are you sorry for?" I asked, keeping my tone even. He rubbed the back of his neck. "For being part of something that shouldn't have happened. It's been eating at me." I wanted to say it to your face. My throat tightened. I hadn't expected that. "Connor," I said slowly, "I appreciate the honesty." He nodded. "I've been trying to make amends. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to own it. Does Megan know you're talking to me?" He shook his head. "No, and I'm not planning to tell her." "This is between us." I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't arrogant. Just tired, guilty human. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "But I won't forget either." That's fair. When he left, I sat there for a long time, watching the steam from my coffee fade into the air. The world outside the window moved, normally cars passing, people talking, a dog pulling its leash, but inside, something fundamental had shifted again. One of them had cracked. Truth had started leaking through the seams. That evening, Megan cooked dinner. It was rare lately, and she seemed to be trying. The smell of roasted vegetables filled the kitchen. We ate mostly in silence, the clinking of forks our only soundtrack. I saw Connor today, I said finally. Her fork froze. Oh, he wanted to talk. What about? About what happened. Her face went pale. Ethan, I'm not angry, I interrupted. I just wanted you to know. She set her fork down slowly. Did he tell you everything? I think he told me enough. Tears filled her eyes, sudden and uncontrollable. I didn't mean for any of this. I was lost, I guess. Scared and stupid. I let her talk. Every word felt like both a confession and a rehearsal. She said she'd felt unseen, that she'd made a mistake, that she regretted it every day. I didn't interrupt. When she was done, I said quietly, the truth always finds its way out, one way or another. She nodded, crying silently. I didn't touch her. I couldn't. After dinner, she went upstairs, and I stayed behind, cleaning the dishes one by one. The water was hot enough to sting. It felt good, real. Later that night, I stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried its memory. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement like broken glass. Across the street, Jason's bar van was parked, the one with his logo on the side. I hadn't noticed it there before. Maybe he'd dropped by earlier, maybe not. The sight of it stirred something cold in me. The next day, news spread among our circle that Jason had lost one of his biggest contracts due to inconsistencies in his business records. Tyler's firm had put him on temporary review pending an ethics inquiry. And Connor, I later learned, was taking a leave from the hospital. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just felt a strange stillness, like the world had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Megan noticed the tension outside our walls, but said little. People have bad luck sometimes, she said when she saw a post about Jason's troubles online. Sometimes, I agreed. Sometimes they make their own. She didn't ask what I meant. One evening, she found the courage to approach me again. Ethan, she said quietly, I know I can't undo what happened, but I want us to try to really try. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, tired, sincere. Part of me wanted to believe her. Another part couldn't. Trying, I said, means telling the truth completely. I did, not to me. To yourself. Her lips trembled. What do you want from me? I want you to stop pretending that this house is the same as it was. She looked around, as if seeing the place for the first time. It's our home, she whispered. It was, I said. Now, it's just where we live. She walked away then, and I let her. The sound of her footsteps faded into the quiet hallway. That night, I sat in the baby's room again. The mobile above the crib spun slowly, the soft chime of its pieces echoing faintly. I opened my notebook once more. This time, I added a fourth line under the list of names, Megan. I didn't put a check next to it. I didn't know what that would mean yet. Weeks passed like that, quiet days. Cautious nights, the world outside adjusting itself to the fallout I had only gently nudged. Each of them, Jason, Tyler, Connor, had vanished from my daily orbit, their absence as deliberate as it was silent. Megan and I continued our fragile dance of civility. We spoke kindly, carefully, as though every word could set off an alarm. But beneath the politeness, something irreversible had already taken root. One afternoon, while organizing the drawer in the kitchen, I found a folded note tucked behind a stack of receipts. It was Megan's handwriting. If you ever see this, I want you to know I'm sorry for what I took from you. I didn't mean to break everything. I hope someday you'll forgive me. There was no date, no signature. Just that quiet apology waiting in the dark. I didn't confront her about it. I didn't need to. Some things were better left acknowledged only in silence. That evening, while she was upstairs, I stepped outside again. The sunset painted the sky in orange and violet, the kind of beauty that hurts when you're not sure you deserve to see it. Jason's van was gone from across the street. The world looked ordinary again, deceptively calm. I stood there a long time, breathing in the warm air, listening to the hum of the neighborhood, the laughter from a distant backyard, the low whir of sprinklers, the faint sound of wind in the trees. It was all so normal, so steady, as if nothing had ever gone wrong, but I knew better. The balance I'd restored was fragile, temporary, like a reflection in a puddle that ripples at the slightest touch. When I finally went inside, Megan was sitting on the couch, staring at the blank television screen. She looked up at me, eyes red but calm. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked. I thought about all the things I could say, the lies, the comforts, the truths that would only wound. Instead, I said softly, "We'll see." And for the first time, the words didn't feel uncertain. They felt honest. I went upstairs, leaving her in the dim glow of the living room. In our bedroom, the half-packed hospital bag sat by the door, waiting for a day that was coming soon. The baby's room down the hall was ready, perfect, untouched. I looked at the mirror across from the bed, at my own reflection, staring back, tired eyes, steady hands. Behind me, the faint hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. The game was over, but the reflection remained. It wasn't victory. It wasn't peace. It was something else, something quieter, heavier. The moment before dawn when the world holds its breath, not knowing if the next day will bring light or more shadow. And in that silence, I realized I no longer needed answers. I already had them. The truth had its own gravity now, and I was learning how to live inside it. 6 months passed before I realized how quiet the world could be when you stop expecting answers. Autumn crept into Texas without much ceremony, just cooler mornings and the faint scent of pecans in the air. The oak leaves in our neighborhood turned the color of rust and fell in lazy spirals across driveways. I had moved into a small townhouse a few miles from the old place, closer to the office and far enough from the familiar sidewalks that every route felt new. People said time heals, but time only rearranges the furniture in your mind. The cracks stay. You just learn to walk around them. Most mornings started the same way now. I'd wake early, brew coffee, and sit by the window watching the street come alive. Delivery trucks, joggers, the hum of ordinary life. I liked that ordinary. It was a word I hadn't trusted for months. The baby was due soon. That single fact still had the power to jolt me awake some nights, my chest tightening at the thought of holding something so small, so dependent on me. Megan and I hadn't spoken much since the separation, but our communication was civil, scheduled, precise. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily. Every conversation was about logistics, doctor visits, forms, insurance, nursery supplies. Polite, careful sentences designed to avoid the past. I'd already prepared a small corner of my new house for the baby. Not a full nursery, just a space, one wall painted a soft grey, a crib, a lamp that cast gentle circles of light on the floor. When I finished setting it up, I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at the empty crib until my eyes blurred. It was the quietest sound in the world, that emptiness taught at work. People had finally stopped asking about the pregnancy beyond polite congratulations. I told only a few that Megan and I were living separately. They nodded, sympathetic, but not intrusive. Divorce or near divorce wasn't rare. People had their own quiet ruins to manage. One Friday evening, I stopped by the grocery store after work. The sky was fading from gold to grey, the air heavy with the scent of rain. I bought things I didn't really need: fresh bread, fruit, a bottle of sparkling water. At the checkout, the cashier smiled and asked, "Big plans for the weekend?" I smiled back. "Not really. Just staying in," she nodded, bagged the groceries, and told me to enjoy my evening. Her kindness stuck in a small, inexplicable way back home. I set everything down on the counter, turned on a soft playlist, and let the music fill the empty space. I poured a glass of water and sat on the back porch. The rain started again, gentle and rhythmic. It was strange how peaceful the world looked now. Months ago, every sound, every color felt sharper, almost violent in its clarity. Now everything had softened. The anger that once lived in my chest had settled into something quieter, a kind of understanding that didn't excuse anything but made breathing easier. A message blinked on my phone. "Megan, doctor says next week is likely. They might induce if needed. I'll keep you updated." I typed back, "Thank you. Let me know if you need a ride or anything." She replied quickly, "I will." "Thank you, Ethan." Her use of my name was polite, distant, and somehow comforting. It meant boundaries. It meant control. That night, I dreamed of the baby's heartbeat, the muffled sound from the ultrasound room months ago. I remembered sitting beside Megan as the doctor pointed at the screen, saying, "There, that's it." Back then, I'd squeezed her hand and whispered, "We made that," in the dream. She didn't answer. The sound kept beating, steady, endless. The following Tuesday, my phone rang just before dawn. I knew before I answered. "It's time," Megan said, her voice calm but trembling slightly. "I'll be there," I said. The hospital was quiet when I arrived, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred. Fluorescent lights glowed down long hallways that smelled of antiseptic and coffee. A nurse led me to the waiting area. Megan's sister sat there, clutching a paper cup, eyes red but smiling. "She's doing okay," she said. "They started a few hours ago." I nodded, unsure what to say. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the steady rhythm of footsteps and beeping machines. Every few minutes, I glanced at the door as if expecting news to walk through it like a person, ours blurred together. At some point, a doctor came out and said everything was fine. Then another nurse appeared and told me, "You can go in now." Megan lay in the hospital bed, pale but glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her hair clung to her forehead, her hands trembling as she held a small bundle wrapped in a white blanket. "It's a boy," she whispered. My chest tightened. I stepped closer, looking down at the tiny face. The baby's eyes were closed, his skin soft and pink, his breaths small but strong. I didn't speak for a long time. Words felt too heavy for that moment. I just reached out, touching his hand with my fingertip. His fingers curled around it instinctively. That single motion broke something inside me, something I didn't realize had survived all the damage. "What will you name him?" I asked softly. Megan smiled faintly. "I thought maybe you should choose." I looked at her, at the fragile hope in her eyes. "How about Caleb?" She nodded slowly. "Caleb," she repeated, as if testing the sound. "It suits him." I sat beside her for a while, the three of us wrapped in a silence that felt almost holy. For a few precious minutes, there was no history, no betrayal, no fear, just life, raw and new. When the nurse came to take Caleb for his first checkup, I stood to leave. "You should rest," I said. Megan reached for my hand. "Ethan, thank you for being here." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," I said truthfully. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city shimmered under thin sunlight that made everything look freshly washed. I walked to the parking lot slowly, breathing in air that felt heavier and lighter all at once. In the days that followed, I visited often. Megan and I spoke gently, almost kindly. We coordinated feedings, paperwork, schedules. I brought her coffee, flowers, small comforts. She smiled more easily now, and I couldn't tell if it was relief, gratitude, or something else entirely. Maybe all of it. Caleb was healthy, loud, demanding. The first time I held him alone, I felt his warmth against my chest and realized that, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about the past. I was thinking about tomorrow, about what kind of father I needed to be, not what kind of husband I had been. 2 weeks later, after Megan and Caleb came home, we met with a mediator to finalize the details of our separation. The office was bright and neutral, the kind of space designed to prevent emotion. Papers were signed, agreements drafted, decisions made. We spoke through a calm professionalism that felt almost surreal. At the end, Megan turned to me. "You're a good man, Ethan," she said softly. "I don't think I realized that until too late. I'm just trying to do what's right," I said. "You always did." Her voice wavered on the last word. For a moment, she looked like the woman I married, the one who laughed easily, who believed in our future. But that image faded quickly, replaced by the version shaped by everything we'd survived. We walked out together, then stood in the parking lot for a moment, unsure how to say goodbye. She held Caleb, his tiny face pressed against her shoulder. I reached out and touched his back gently. "I'll see you both soon," I said. She nodded. "We'll be here." And then she was gone, the car pulling away slowly, the sound of the tires fading into the distance. I stood there until the lot emptied, the evening light turning gold across the asphalt. That night, I poured myself a glass of sparkling water and sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. I looked at the photo on my phone, the one from my birthday months ago. Me and Megan smiling before everything changed. I didn't delete it. I didn't need to. It was a reminder of both what was lost and what was learned. I opened my notebook one last time. The list of names was still there, faint pencil marks beside each. I drew a single line through them, not as erasure, but as closure. Then I wrote one new word beneath it. Enough. I closed the notebook and placed it in a drawer. The air in the house felt still, almost expectant. I stood, walked to the small crib in the corner, and ran my fingers along its edge. Soon, Caleb would spend nights here. I wanted this place to be peaceful, free of shadows, for the first time in months. I turned on music, not the quiet background kind, but something with rhythm, something alive. The sound filled the rooms, bouncing of walls that had listened to too much silence. A few days later, Megan called. "We're doing fine," she said. "Caleb's sleeping better. I thought you'd like to come by tomorrow. I'd love that," I said. She hesitated. "Ethan, thank you for not hating me." "I don't hate you," I said. "I just learned where my limits are. That's fair." When the call ended, I sat there for a while, watching the evening light crawl across the floor. It felt like the world was exhaling again, slower this time, calmer. The next evening, I brought dinner to Megan's house, simple food, nothing heavy. She looked tired but peaceful. Caleb slept in his bassinet nearby, his small chest rising and falling with that effortless rhythm only newborns have. We ate quietly, occasionally smiling over small things, his first smile, the way he gripped Megan's finger. It wasn't reconciliation, not really, but something gentler. Mutual understanding wrapped in exhaustion and gratitude. When I left, she walked me to the door. "Be careful driving," she said. "I will," she hesitated. "Would you like to hold him once more before you go?" I nodded. She placed Caleb in my arms. He stirred, opened his eyes, and looked up at me, clear, steady, curious. For a second, everything fell away. The betrayal, the months of silence, the quiet retribution. There was only this, the fragile weight of a life that didn't know any of it. I whispered, "You're going to be okay." Maybe it was to him. Maybe it was to both of us, back home. I set the baby's blanket on the couch and sat beside it, tracing the tiny patterns stitched into the fabric. The house no longer felt empty. It felt ready. Later that night, I stepped outside. The air was cool, the stars sharp above the rooftops. Across the street, a new family had moved in. Laughter drifted from their porch. Someone clinked glasses. For a moment, the sound made me smile. I went back inside and poured another glass of water. It shimmered faintly in the kitchen light. I raised it slightly, a quiet gesture to no one in particular. "To clarity," I murmured. "And to beginnings." The words weren't grand. They didn't need to be. They belonged only to that moment, to calm after everything. The stillness that comes when you finally stop trying to rewrite what already happened. I drank slowly, set the glass down, and turned off the light dot in the dark. The world felt balanced again. Not perfect, just honest. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough.